Alright everybody, welcome back to my channel, and this right here is part 4 on my take on the history of beat 'em ups. Now if you haven't seen the other parts, that's fine. You can actually watch this one as a standalone video, but I highly recommend you go back and watch the first 3 parts. I will leave the links down below in the description area. So with that said, let's get started.
Happy 2000!
So here we are. The year is 2000. We had managed to survive the dreaded Y2K and what some had thought would be the zombie apocalypse to arrive past the stroke of midnight at the turn of the century. We had seen the arrival of the Dreamcast and would soon see the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube all arrive to usher in the 6th console generation. The arcades were no longer friendly to beat 'em up games, and the last generation of consoles were no better to the genre either. Would the new consoles provide a better home? Let's find out. Up until now, beat 'em ups lacked one crucial aspect to its presentation, and that's a good storyline. Squaresoft wanted to change that when it released The Bouncer on the PS2 shortly after its launch. The concept was revolutionary, a beat 'em up with a very good storyline that complemented the gameplay. It was a mixture of a Final Fantasy type setting and characters mixed with the beat 'em up genre to give this game a unique take. The story plays out in segments and you get to choose from 3 characters. The game was a very early PlayStation 2 title and an early indicator of what the PS2 could do and what gamers could expect from that console. Now unfortunately there weren't a lot of titles as far as beat 'em ups during this time, and the only other ones that I could find that were somewhat good were Spider-Man and Gekido on the PS1. Pretty sure I pronounced that incorrectly. Very light pickings if you were a beat 'em up fan. And that was not a good sign, but luckily a little bit of help was on the way. Now up until this point there hasn't been a lot of PC games as far as beat 'em ups are concerned, much less original titles. This one here is about to change all that. The Rage, released by Fluid Games for the PC and only the PC back in 2001. You can choose up to 4 characters in this game as you battle your way through some really dark looking environments. The gameplay? I'll leave that up to you. It's somewhat slow as far as pacing is concerned, especially for a beat 'em up type game. But if you were a PC owner and not a console owner back at that time, this was pretty much your only choice, so here it is.
All right, we're going to start your exam now. You might feel a little pressure. Okay?
Oh, what's that?
It looks like Frogger Advanced. Now let's keep moving.
Doctor?
Oh, that's fine, nurse. That's just Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. Now, moving along. Yeah.
Hey, is that Spider-Man?
Game Boy Advance, more games, more fun. Rated E for everyone.
Have you seen my shorts?
Now 2001 was the year the Game Boy Advance was launched. Many people thought the much more powerful consoles and arcades would be the launch point for the revival of the beat 'em up genre. Little did gamers know in 2001 that this little handheld right here would be pivotal towards that return. Now, one of the first beat 'em ups was Jackie Chan's Adventure, Legend of the Dark Hand. The Jackie Chan cartoon was popular during that time, and the same art style and feel of the animated show was brought to the small gaming screen. The game had some nice animation and a nice presentation overall. Gekido? Man, I gotta find out how to pronounce this. It got the Game Boy treatment with the release of Gekido Advance, which was pretty much a sequel of sorts to the PS1 game. This title over here focuses on Tetsuo as he returns to the village only to find it overrun with the dead rising and villagers being attacked. The graphics and the smooth animations were becoming a staple among many Game Boy Advance games by this point, and this one right here was no exception to that. A nice addition to your Game Boy Advance library. Beat-em-ups on the PC side were relegated mostly to ports of titles already released on other home consoles. 2003 was a monumental year for PC games and gamers in general. Beats of Rage was a title that was created by a team of fans of beat-em-ups and Streets of Rage for the PC. It was created purely for fun, but the game was a massive hit, and Team Senile saw their passion as a gateway to something much more for gamers everywhere. Thanks to them and fans of this game, the engine they used to create their game was tweaked and re-released as an open source project. The name of that project? Open Bore, or BOR, which stood for Beats of Rage, of course. It was created and used by gamers and fans to create their own beat-em-up games. Soon, a huge community was born of this, giving fans an outlet to create and share their passion for the genre. Shifting that creative outlet to individuals outside of a gaming studio and proving that the beat-em-up genre was far from dead. In 1987, Double Dragon was introduced to the world and brought the beat-em-up genre to a whole new level. Million Company decided to not only revisit the original, but to completely overhaul the fighting moves and slightly alter the graphics. And the result? One of the best, if not the best, Double Dragon game to ever grace any console. New levels were added, and it even has a mode that allows one player to play as two players, where you can switch back and forth between both characters. Why? Not sure, but there it is, it's there, it's an option. Arcade side, Sammy released Demolish Fist, an entirely 3D style game with some really good controls and sharp looking graphics. This one here allowed you to choose from 4 characters, each with their set of moves. This one had the feel of a Sega beat 'em up, and that's because it was using the Sega Naomi board. A nice solid game, and one that is not very well known. Heck, I never even heard about it until I started doing research for this video. If you ever come across this game, I recommend it. Go ahead and play it.
Go!
Astro Boy may not be as well known as when his comics were originally released back in the late 1950s, but Sega here sure did a hell of a job for such an outdated comic character. Astro Boy on the Game Boy Advance combined extremely colorful graphics, great animations, large bosses, and cutscenes that told the story of Astro Boy and his adventures. And to top it off, the game mixed beat 'em up aspects with that of horizontal shooters and a little bit of a RPG element to break up the monotony. Plays like an arcade with its frantic pacing and unlimited continues, but the steep difficulty will keep you coming back for more. This one here is a great game. It's extremely fun, and if this was Sega's way of paying homage to such an iconic manga character, mission accomplished. On the GameCube side, Capcom released a cel-shaded beat-em-up by the name of Beautiful Joe. In this game, the protagonist gets sucked into a movie-style land where he has to rescue his girlfriend. The graphics on this one were cel-shaded. It had a look that resembled that of Jet Set Radio if you had played that one on the Dreamcast. What was cool with this one is that you had a button that allowed you to slow down time, which made for some great cinematic style fun. This one here was also released on the PS2 the following year, but it got started on the GameCube. The Gladiator was an arcade game that offered great visuals, great animated sprite-based characters, lots of on-screen mayhem, and a slew of characters to choose from. It was a surprise to still find a sprite-based game like this in the arcades at a time when 3D was like the new norm. The game had some great controls and was a blast to play, especially in 2-player co-op. It even had attacking moves you could pull off using Street Fighter II style joystick motions. This is another one of those rare gems that never got the console release treatment, and you know what? That's a real shame. This one here is a really good game, and I had never even heard of it until I was researching for this video. But if you can get your hands on it, if you come upon this game as a beat 'em up fan, I highly recommend you play it.
cube. Game でしか味わえない感動がある。任天堂ゲームキューブ、ゼルダの伝説、風のパクト。
It's still on, and we're going. Cyrus sent an emissary this afternoon to make sure. Now, Cyrus don't want anybody packed, and he don't want anybody flexing any muscle. So I gave him my word that the warriors would uphold the truce. Now, everybody says that Cyrus is the one and only. I think we better go have a look for ourselves.
The PlayStation 2 had a surprise hit when Rockstar decided to revive an old 70s B-movie flick by the name of The Warriors. Now, if you were a fan of the movie, this game was a major surprise from a gaming and content viewpoint. If you were a regular beat-em-up fan, it not only offered amazing gameplay, but it introduced you to the original content and in the process delivered a surprisingly rich storyline that added to the lore of the original movie storyline.
Vermin. What's up, Porgy? Let's get going. We gotta meet up with the new blood. He's waiting for us in the alley. All right, let's go.
The game offered extremely well done gameplay mechanics for a beat-em-up game. You had so many buttons at your disposal, and the game integrated many different types of attacks, defensive maneuvers, and exploration aspects that were rarely seen in a game of this type.
Not bad, but let's see if you can rip off some car radios.
It sucked you into a world that not only allowed you to interact with the other players and enemies, but with the environment as well. Only Rockstar could take a property from the 70s and bring it back to life for the modern age, and at the same time create a very diverse and solid fighting experience.
Can you count, suckers? I say the future is ours!
But Rockstar was not satisfied with bringing this amazing game over to the console side, and decided to release the game for the PlayStation Portable just 2 years later. And the gameplay mechanics, they were still intact 100%. It seems the Game Boy Advance was not the only portable system out there capable of bringing some great beat-em-up games to play on the go.
All right, that's enough.
Oh boy, okay, Dad and Me. This one here is weird. Dad and Me is a very strange title and one that I was not so sure if I should include as part of this video. The game was never released for any console. In fact, it was created as a Flash-based game which you could play straight from the browser in your computer. You could also argue that this might have been a trial run or an experimental run by the company that will be known as the Behemoth, before releasing more polished and content-heavy material in the years after. The game is a beat-em-up game in its most basic description. You go around beating up people, kids mostly, for the most part, with a couple of characters here and there offering slight resistance to your onslaught. In the game, you are basically a bully, and your dad seems to be a bully as well, as he drops you off at the local playground so you could make friends? Yeah, right, it's probably so you can get some practice. You travel the entire neighborhood as you beat the snot out of every single kid that you come across. Once in a while, you might come across another bully. The visual presentation and overall humor of the game is something that will become a staple of the company, but this game gave us a glimpse of what we would come to expect from them down the road. It's a short title, very violent, but at the same time, it's very funny. It's a weird mixture that somehow is able to work. Dungeon Fighter Online was initially released in South Korea back in 2005, but it didn't make it to the States until 2010. This online MMO beat 'em up is like a mixture of Diablo, River City Ransom, and League of Legends. It incorporates very heavy RPG elements, fighting mechanics that include combos and special moves, and a strong selection of characters and classes that ensures diversity among online players. The game requires you to create an online character, and you can have multiple saved characters on your account, giving you the chance to experiment to find out what class and what character fits your style best. According to some online information I found, this game here is one of the most lucrative online games, and the game is 100% free to play, but as with most games today, they get you on the upgrades and the weapons. There's also seasons and packages that you can purchase that revolve around the game world, allowing for expansions to build a larger world to interact with. I'm still kinda shocked that this game is still not available on any game console. This game here is the ultimate dream of any beat 'em up fan out there. It took the genre and brought it to online gamers everywhere, meshing different genres to bring out a fun MMO to all beat 'em up fans out there. It's currently on Steam. Check it out. Anybody who has played Double Dragon 3 in the arcade will undoubtedly admit it is not the best entry in the series. In fact, it's the weakest, by far. Usually by the third installment, franchises have the game and mechanics down packed, but for some reason Double Dragon 3 is the total opposite, and that's no surprise considering Technos decided to give a third-party company the responsibility of bringing out the title. So after the creation of the BOR engine and its release to the open source community, some fans decided to do a proper Double Dragon 3 sequel using that very same engine. And the result is Double Dragon 3 BOR, a solid entry for PC gamers during the mid-2000s. Gone is the stuttering frame rate, so is the microtransactions, and that mediocre gameplay, it's gone as well. In its place is a solid beat 'em up worthy of the name Double Dragon. And the best part about it, it's that it's free. You can download it right now if you want and play it. The graphics were spruced up, and the overall gameplay speed is somewhat reminiscent of the past two titles with a bit more speed to it. The difficulty, it's still up there, and it's not an easy game. But overall, it's a very solid addition to your beat 'em up game library. Go ahead and check it out. Now for those of you out there who bought Fantastic Four on the PS1, let's all be reasonable and admit to one another that it was a mediocre title at best. The GameCube title that you see here is a vast improvement on that other title, and is much more refined as far as a beat 'em up game is concerned.
Good morning, Victor. I will escort you.
Now while the PS1 version stayed close to the actual comic, this one here is actually tied more to the movie that came out that same year. The 3D models are all made after the actual actors, and they even lend their voices for the game. The gameplay was way more refined. You had lots of combos to memorize, and you can upgrade your fighting moves for each character. The graphics were okay for that time. You have to remember, this is the early 2000s. The pacing was fast, and the fighting mechanics were solid, and the array of moves is what made this game fun to play. It had you switching between characters from time to time as well. You know, all in all, it's a pretty good solid choice if you are in the mood for a brawler, especially on the GameCube.
But I will hurt that I'll get you out of
here. As a beat-em-up fan, you had to see Sega as being one of your best friends. That friend of yours that's there for you when you always need him. Sega's not making the best games out there, they're not the most revolutionary, but they do have a steady stream of titles being released constantly on the console or the arcade side. And Yakuza on the PS2 was another one of those titles. But Yakuza was actually revolutionary. It took that beat-em-up genre and incorporated a really violent but very well thought out storyline to complement that game. It let you play as the characters trying to start up his own family in the seedy Japanese underworld. So sure enough, there's gonna be a lot of violence, a lot of cursing, and a lot of fighting. And oh boy, do you beat up people, and not just beat them up, you beat the hell out of them. This game not only had you doing a lot of fighting, but it had you doing a lot of reading. There's a lot of dialogue in this game, and that's because it's a good storyline. And you're gonna be doing a lot of exploration too as you travel about the city, trying to get from one place to the other in completing objectives. Now Yakuza here was so well received that it spawned quite a few sequels. Some are even available on Game Pass as we speak. But it all started here on the PS2. Go ahead and check it out, it's a really good game. You like Dragon Ball the anime? You have a Game Boy Advance? Do you like beat 'em ups? Well, here you go. This game was a 2D playing beat 'em up that captured the anime look perfectly. The controls were tight, the gameplay straightforward, and it's a pretty good game to have on the go when you have some time to kill. Especially when your mom spends about an hour and a half in the vegetable section in the supermarket. This title will help you out during that time. Not much to say about this one other than go play it, it's fun. Good old Sega, still churning out beat-em-ups in the arcades. You know, this is one company that never gave up on that genre, and once again they bring us another title, this one, Asian Dynamite. If that guy at the beginning looks familiar, that's because that's Hondo. I just love that name, he just keeps coming back in different forms. He's like a coronavirus variant. This game is basically a sequel to Dynamite Deca 2, which would make this Dynamite Deca 3, but with a different name. Why? It don't matter. If you were a fan of the first two games and find yourself in an actual arcade place, this is a great game to pop a few quarters into. It may not be revolutionary, but it is a sign letting us know that Sega hasn't forgotten the beat 'em up fans.
Gene, This place reeks.
I know. Wait, you don't expect me to mop up, do you?
Come on, those guys are cake.
Not to mention, much sexier than you.
Well, your sexy little friends. They're coming for a dance.
They're still sexier than you are.
This game did not take itself seriously, and I actually mean that in a good way. No deep storyline about conflict and betrayal and all that kind of nonsense. No. It was a brawler set in a Western type setting with Final Fantasy type looking characters. In the final days of the PlayStation 2's lifespan, this game was a welcome hit for any beat 'em up fan. It was just fun to play, and you just turned it on and you just punched away and was entertained by the over-the-top writing and characters in the game. When this game originally came out, it received some mixed reviews and didn't actually sell very well, but over the years it has attained cult status and is considered nowadays to be one of the sleeper hits of the PlayStation 2 library. This is one of those games that you just have to try out at least one time just to say that you have played it, and I'm pretty sure that after that, you're gonna come back to it again. By 2008, it was kinda hard to come up with ingenuity in a beat 'em up game. But this next one here used new mechanics to kinda spruce things up a bit. Kenka Bancho is unique in that it is heavy in dialogue. In fact, it is very heavy in dialogue. The other thing with this game is that you can initiate a fight by using your stare. You don't just go up to people and start punching them. No. You have to stare at them. And once you lock into a stare down with another character, you have to choose from snips of dialogue in order to match a sentence given to you right at the beginning of the stare down. It's a very strange mechanic, but it's not too hard to get the hang of it by the second encounter. Now, believe it or not, by looking at the video, this is an actual beat 'em up. It's kind of hard to believe, but the beat 'em up part is very slow and it's not very indicative of a game of this type. These controls here have got to be one of the slowest I have ever seen on a beat 'em up game of any type ever. But the reason I added it here is because I thought it brought a new idea to the table, and sometimes that's enough. You know, the Nintendo DS also had a few beat 'em ups, and this one here is Tokyo Beatdown. I love the game intro on this one because it makes it feel like you're watching a TV show, and not just any TV show, like a cable action-packed TV show, like something out of the USA channel, like Burn Notice. Anyway, this one lets you take control of a few cops as they battle criminals in Tokyo. And the fun part about this game is the silly writing and the over-the-top characters. The animation is also pretty fluid and the graphics are nicely rendered for the most part. The bottom screen for the DS is mostly useless and just shows information you can do without. At least for me it did. The fighting mechanics, they're a bit slow, but the combos and the ability to pick up guns make it a standout among other beat 'em ups. If you've never picked this one up, give it a try, you might like it. Xenoclash is a solid 3D beat 'em up and a nice addition to a rare viewpoint seen in a beat 'em up, the first person viewpoint. It's not often that we see this type of game from this type of perspective. Okay, which is the last one that I pointed out? I think that was Super Spy on the Neo Geo back in part 2 of the series. Yeah, it's been a while. So this game is a nice change of pace actually. The characters and overall settings are like a mixture between a Mad Max movie and a fantasy flick. Now you do get to battle enemies by hand for the most part, but you do get to use weapons quite often. You also fight small number of enemies at a time, indicated by a versus like screen that pops up right before the encounters. The overall world and characters are some of the most original you will find in a game from that time, and that makes this beat 'em up very unique. It was also released on the Xbox 360. Check it out if you can get your hands on it. Pretty sure it's cheap nowadays.
¿Qué onda, chavos? ¿Ya conocen la nueva plataforma de educación y entretenimiento Cibo?
Claro, yo ya tengo mi Cibo con 5 videojuegos, una conexión de internet sin contratos y una hora de navegación gratis.
¡Wow! ¡Lo tienes todo! No necesitas una computadora o ir a alguna tienda a comprar tus videojuegos.
Solo conecta tu Cibo a la televisión y tendrás acceso a la Cibo tienda, donde podrás bajar juegos para toda la familia.
¡Está genial! Solo necesitas comprar Cibo créditos de prepago para descargar juegos, navegar en internet, mandar correos o chatear con tus amigos.
¡Está padrísimo! También puedes hacer búsquedas de información que te ayuden con tus tareas escolares, sin salir de casa.
Ponte listo, a partir del 19 de abril aprovecha un súper descuento en la compra de un Cibo para que te lleves un juego de huevos.
No, un juego de huevos es un videojuego de aventura basado en los personajes de Huevo Cartoon y es exclusivo.
¡Está genial! Con Cibo,
juega, aprende y conéctate.
Now every console generation has that one game, that one title that captures all the elements of a genre and gameplay mechanics and brings them all together to bring about a title, a game that defies expectations and breaks barriers. Batman Arkham Asylum put a check mark on all of those. Released right at the end of the decade, it was a love letter to not just the Batman franchise, but to the beat 'em up genre.
You copy. Over. The comms are screwed. I can't reach anyone. Hello. If anyone is on this channel, please respond. Central Control, please respond.
It combined mechanics seen in stealth games, combo-heavy fighting moves, emphasis on exploration, and a slew of weaponry and detective-type enhancements to bring about one of the best superhero games ever made. let alone the best Batman game to date on its release. The game dived into his vast catalog of arch-villains and delivered some of the best confrontations with the Dark Knight ever to grace in any entertainment medium. Now, I'm not going to go into a lot of details on this game since that can pretty much take up a video on its own, but I will say this: if you have yet to play this game or any of the Arkham games, you are truly doing a disservice to yourself as a gamer. And even if you have played it, it's never a bad idea to revisit them and get swept up on the superhero universe, where a man dressed up as a flying mammal gets to solve crimes and beat up goons by the dozens. This game is just pure fun. I love it.
Yeah! You want some of this? Is he okay?
And as we close down the 2000s, we can't do so without our good friend Sega. What did I tell you? Now, this next game here was not made by Sega, but they published a title made by Platinum Games on the Wii that was one of a kind. Mad World is not only visually unique, but intensely graphic in its presentation. It takes fighting mechanics and adds violent combos, chainsaw-heavy power moves, and grappling-like finishing moves that will put it in contention with something like Mortal Kombat. The visuals and the art direction on this game were something truly one of a kind. The team had been somewhat inspired by the Sin City comic. Itsushi Inaba, who had produced Beautiful Joe, also produced this title, and it was directed by Shigenori Nishikawa, who had worked on Resident Evil 4. Platinum Games was created by a small team of former Capcom members from Clover Studios. The game has you playing as Jack Kamen, a former Marine and cop that enters a game show as a way to save the daughter of the mayor. Look, don't worry about the story, just enjoy the game. It's a fun beat 'em up with tons of violence, plenty of profanity, and some sick fighting moves that can only be found on the family-friendly Nintendo Wii console.
We would like to play.
You see that boy, you wanna stop shooting that motherfucker? Body that, we gon' body that, yeah, body that, we gon' body that, yeah, body that, we gon' body that, body that, we gon' body that, body that, we gon' body that, yeah, body that, we gon' body that.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up the 2000s. You know, ending the 1990s, you would have thought the beat-em-up genre was quickly coming to an end. There were barely any titles available. But the new game consoles with their new DVD and Blu-ray mediums gave developers an almost limitless digital canvas to inject so many new ideas with eye-popping presentations, and allowed the beat-em-up genre to implement new game mechanics. This gave gamers some truly immersive and unique titles across many platforms. So the genre was back on an uptick, but would it stay that way entering the 2010s? Stay tuned for part 5. I hope you join me for my next video. Keep playing, keep gaming, and as always, take care of yourselves.